This is the Art of Changing Your Life, and welcome to the Take the Road to Freedom Summit. Today, my guest is Dr. Joe Serio, and he's a popular and entertaining keynote speaker, trainer, business consultant on time management and organizational skills, strategies for effective communication, legacy, and leadership. Welcome, Joe.
Hey, thanks, Bradley. Great to be here.
Yeah, thanks so much for participating. I really appreciate it. And I'm gathering a bunch of different guests and experts in different various areas who have found their purpose in life. And, I'm asking each of them, what is their purpose? How did they find it? And how in the heck did you turn that into, a business? So why don't you tell the people who are watching, a little bit about yourself, and we'll just kind of jump right into it.
Sure, that'd be great. So, what's my purpose and how did I come upon it? So my story is I was born and raised in New York. I was a ninth of 12 kids. And when you grow up in a little kind of clan like that, and you have older siblings who are highly, achievement oriented, and the environment was kind of like, well, if you didn't get 100 on that exam, yeah, who cares, right?
Yeah.
I got a 97 on the test, and the first response is, what happened to the other 3 points? Okay?
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. And so, I eventually came to the conclusion that I had the best parents in the world, right? And that's what you have to do. You say, okay, my parents were my parents. They did what they knew how to do at the time they did it, and let's get off their backs and leave them alone and get on with our lives. So I grew up afraid of everything, and it informed my purpose. It came to be why I do what I do. So I wanted to play music. I wanted to write books. I wanted to be on TV. I wanted to be on the cover of newspaper, magazine. I wanted to be in a rock and roll band. I wanted to travel around the world. I wanted to record on an album, right? So you know how old I am. I wanted to record on an album, and I wanted to speak foreign languages, and I wanted, I had all this stuff. Well, I actually did none of it because I was so afraid of what people thought about me. I was so afraid of making a mistake. I was so afraid of not being enough, right? I'm less than. So that's how I grew up, and that whole list of things that I just kind of babbled off to you, I ended up doing all of it. And I realized that what I thought I was going to get from doing that list, I didn't get. It wasn't value. It wasn't meaning. It wasn't meaningful for a life, right? It was fun, and it was cool, and it was interesting, but, it wasn't. So I ran away when I was, after college, I guess 22, 23 years old. Instead of facing myself and who I really wanted to be, and I knew who I wanted to be.
Yeah.
At 12, 13, 15 years old, I wanted to be a motivational speaker, a professional speaker, a trainer. I wanted to do all the things that I do now. But I didn't have the nerve, right? I still had to get the nerve. Yeah. That's my tagline. My tagline is to get the nerve. So I ran away. I went to Russia. And I ended up living in Russia for almost 10 years. I studied Russian. I ended up investigating the Russian mafia. I ended up as the only American to have an internship in the Organized Crime Control Department of the Soviet National Police.
Wow.
And I worked with the police. I worked with the KGB. I worked with, American and European corporations. And my job was to keep them out of trouble. And if they got into trouble, my job was to make that trouble go away. So if there was a Russian mafia group banging down your door and you're my client and you give me a call, my job was to make that group go away. However I did that.
I won't ask.
Yeah, that's a different conversation. So I did that. I went to China. I lived in China for a year. I wandered all over the world. And I drove a cab in New York. I did a lot of cool stuff, but none of it was the stuff I really wanted to do.
Yeah.
It wasn't my purpose. Except the way I look at it is, okay, well, you know what? I got a lot of cool experiences and cool insights about the world and about people and about fear and about my own fear.
Hmm.
So I finally got the nerve to play musical instruments and go get a PhD and all that stuff. So then I kind of got a little bit unleashed, you know. So then I realized that anything I wanted to do, let's go do it, right? So when I was getting my PhD in criminal justice, I um, I was visiting prisons all the time, and one of the prisons was the one here north of Houston in Texas, where they do the executions for the state of Texas.
Wow.
And so I got to, you know, I've been in the chamber, the death chamber, multiple times, and I became friends with the warden. And so one day, the warden's standing outside, smoking a cigarette during his break, and I said, "You know what, warden? I I thought it, I've always thought it'd be really cool to play music in a prison." And so he said, "Hey, no problem. Let's set it up." So we got our equipment, we got the band I was playing with, we loaded up and set up on the yard of this prison where they do the executions, and we played in 100 and good solid Texas 105-degree summer. We found the only little piece of shade that we could find. We had 300 inmates on the yard dancing around. You know, so it was just like, you know what? I'm just going to do whatever I want to do and forget about the fear and what people are going to say and the judgment and worrying about mistakes and, you know, whatever. So that's my purpose. My purpose is to continue my own journey without letting the fear stop me cold in my tracks, and to help organizations turn themselves around, turn their employees around by helping them face fear.
Yeah, so the underlying thing there, and the thing that comes to mind for me is is that what I'm hearing is that you had something you want to do that was kind of underneath all of that. That you're afraid to get out and just kind of be yourself, and that is your purpose, to just be yourself. A lot of people are really afraid to do that, I'm I've still got some fears, and I want to get up on stage and talk to people and help them find their purpose more. And this interview series is all part of that. Is there anything that you found really helpful that helped you, release your fears and just go try something? Because you hear a lot of people, they want to get into music, and rock stars get into, one of the benefits is all for the girls. Well, going to sing at a prison, that's really not one of them. So what was like with some of those, motivational? What was some of the motivation behind there, or maybe something you learned that you can pass on to someone else to help them let go of their fear to be themselves and start living their.
Sure. Yeah, you know, the thing I decided to do, one thing I was afraid of was writing. Okay, anything that would expose me, right? Anything that would expose us to judgment, we start getting, freaked out about. So I finally sat down and wrote the book that I wanted to write. It was called Investigating the Russian Mafia. It was about my experience in Russia. And so I wrote it, and I edited it myself 5 or 6 times, and I gave it to a couple of people to read, and I just worked it and worked it and worked it, and I handed it into the publisher, and the publisher printed it word for word. They didn't change a single word of the manuscript.
Wow.
And it was something I was really, really proud of. Okay, so that kind of broke the dam open for me. So to get to your question, the thing that I started was, my tagline is "Get the nerve," and get the nerve to succeed, and that kind of idea. So I started a book series called Get the Nerve. So the Get the Nerve book series, the first book that came out is called Overcoming Fear: 50 Lessons on Being Bold and Living the Dream. And just to give you an idea of what the series is like, the second one that came out is Public Speaking: 50 Lessons on Presenting Without Losing Your Cool, right? So I was petrified of public speaking. I took everything I knew and learned, and I jumped up in front of 1,000 people and spoke for 3 hours and had a blast, whatever. So in the Overcoming Fear book, I put a 7-step action plan. So when that moment comes up that you're talking about,
Hmm.
and stay with me. I mean, as weird as it sounds, I read my own book to remind myself how to deal with my fear. Right? My sister said that's the true definition of a self-help book. I wrote my own self-help book. Right?
I never thought
So
of it that way.
yeah, so to give you a couple of quick things. Number one, acknowledge fear. Acknowledge that you're afraid. So often we're like, I can't show anybody that I'm afraid. That's weakness. It's machismo, whatever. All this stuff that we say, I got to keep it in and I've got to keep all the balls juggling and I just can't show anybody who I am. Well, like you said earlier, this is all about living who you are, not in terms of the fear, not in terms of the sheen, not in terms of the image you're projecting, but in terms of who you are, right? How can we strip down those layers? Number one, I'm afraid. Number two, identify it. What am I actually afraid of? Am I afraid that people will make fun of me? Well, yes, but let's go deeper. I'm afraid that people will make fun of me and reject me and leave me and I will be alone and I won't be able to survive. And all the things that we told ourselves growing up with these messages, right?
Yeah.
And then it's things like, what's the worst case scenario? What's the worst thing that's going to happen to me if I get up on stage and speak? Oh, my zipper's down. Oh, my pants fall down. Oh, I don't remember the next line. Who cares? I mean, nobody cares anymore, right?
Yeah.
So I've done a couple of presentations where I lost my train of thought. So I just turn to the audience and say, okay, where was I again? And they'll tell me, and we move on, and nobody cares,
Yeah.
right? So what's the worst case scenario? I've got to tell you a quick funny story. In October, I was in Colorado. Uh, October of last year, 2014, I was in Colorado speaking, and I was talking about these 7 action steps. And
Hmm.
I said, what's the worst case scenario? And then I moved on to the next point, which is gather information and support from people around you to go do what you want to do. And then all of a sudden, the laptop shut down,
Oh,
the screen retracted into the ceiling, the projector shut off, and it was hanging from the ceiling on a platform that also retracted back into the ceiling. All of a sudden, my presentation was over.
your pants fell down,
I was
basically.
like, exactly. I was like, well, there you have it. That is my worst case scenario. It just happened that second. And the audience loved it because you could hear mechanical sounds in the ceiling and the walls. And somebody in the audience said, oh, the walls are going to start closing in on us any minute now. And I said, you know what? That's perfect. That's perfect.
Yeah.
How much time do you have to be afraid if the walls are moving in on you? You don't have any time. You have to solve the problem. That's
Yeah.
it,
Yeah. It's
right?
a
So it's
perfect
it's that
example
kind of
too.
thing, right? Remembering those mechanisms.
Yeah, it's a perfect example. You couldn't ask for anything better. I mean, you stood there and just were present with the people and just were real. And they're like, wow, this guy's really living through his fears. Like, this is the worst thing that could happen to a speaker. Everything just shuts down, and like you're just there, pretty much almost naked, without the presentation. Um, that kind of leads me, like even being in this interview series, sometimes I get a little nervous and thinking, well, I have to ask the right question at the right time. And it's really not so much about that anymore. It's really just about being present with the person and
Right.
and with your audience. Is there anything that you can say to that to help people be more present? Because I think once you're present, people acknowledge you as being real and being authentic, and that really helps create a connection. You know?
Yes, definitely. And I learned that when I was playing music. When I was getting my PhD, I would play music the second Friday of every month with about 15 people. We would go out, hang out on this wood porch of a cafe restaurant, and we'd play music from 6 p.m. to midnight. And I realized what people wanted to hear was not CD quality perfect music.
Mhm.
They came to drink beer, hang out with their friends, and have a good time. And if we made mistakes, 99% of the time people didn't know it. And if they noticed it, they didn't care, because the purpose wasn't my ego. The purpose was not the band's ego. The purpose was people having a good time. And people have a good time when you're sincere, authentic, and genuine. And they can spot it a mile away when you're not.
Yeah.
And they'll be very forgiving if you make a mistake. But they won't be forgiving if you didn't come prepared to be engaged and to be connected, and to be real about it. They really, they don't have a lot of patience for that. But when it comes to speaking, and you, for example, interviewing, presenting, the audience wants to get what they came for. That's it. And if everything is about your ego, or excessive nervousness, like you said, well, what if I don't ask the right question at the right time, and I'll be, oh my God, and people are going to make fun of me, and if that's what you're worried about, then the audience is not going to get what they came for.
Yeah, it's um, yeah. If you're even, this is a perfect example. This interview, and in this exact moment, I can see myself speaking, but your end is frozen up a little bit every once in a while, and it's making me almost nervous. But as we're having the conversations, it's letting me, just be like, okay, let it go. It's not a big deal. People will be more forgiving. And now it almost seems like it's staged and planned, but it's just what it is. I guess the worst that happen is just my background could fall down, and you'll see the ugly gray wall behind me, or just whatever.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, a perfect example of the universe aligning like a message, and how to and the message, and I guess all the things around it to really emphasize it. So you found your purpose of just living and being who you really are. How did
Mhm.
let's kind of lead into the next area. Okay, how in the heck did you turn that into a business? I'm specifically interested, in how you're doing it, because I want to get out there and be able to tell my story more, in my personal way. I kind of see myself as a cross between Tony Robbins and Jim Carrey, somewhere in there. If they would have had kids at some point, don't know how that's gonna happen, because they're both tall, and I'm not exactly the tallest guy. So I'll just say maybe I'm their stepchild. I don't know. But so yeah, how did how did you turn that into a business? Because obviously you're happy and you're doing what you love, but a lot of people can feel they're authentic with their friends, but that's hard to turn into a business.
Well, first thing, you kind of reminded me of something I tell my audiences sometimes during some of my presentations, and that is, how did I get over? And that's a different story. It's a longer story. But one of the ways is, I tell my audience, I said, look, I don't care what you think about me, right? And I said, look, I want to get good evaluations. I want this association, this company, this organization to invite me back. So obviously I want to do a great job, and I want to give you what you came for. But beyond that, I don't care what you think about me. I don't care if I'm too bald or not bald enough. I don't care if I'm too short or too tall. I don't care what you think about me, right? In that regard, because I've made that transition to knowing and believing that I have something to say, and that outstrips whatever judgment you're going to make. But you're going to make a judgment, right? People judge everybody all the time, okay?
Yeah.
And then it's my choice. If it's constructive criticism, I listen to it, evaluate it, and make a change if a change is needed. If it's, gossipy criticism, hypercritical, judgmental in all the negative, pejorative ways, I don't care. because it tells me more about the person doing the judging than it tells me about myself.
Yeah, that's a
And
perfect way to.
I generally I don't hang around people like that. I don't have them in my life. I don't tolerate negative, pessimistic people dragging me down because I don't let them. And the bottom line is, so often we let people, right? And
Yeah.
we say, oh, they made me feel so bad. No, they didn't. No, they didn't. You gave them permission, blah, blah, blah,
Hmm.
whatever,
Yeah.
right? So onto the business side of it, um, I'm there are two things that I believe. I believe in assets and access. So I ask people frequently, what are your assets and what's your access? And by that I mean, when we say assets, everyone thinks money and house and car and whatever. I want to know what your assets are beyond that. What's your skill set?
Hmm.
What's your talent? What is it that you know? Okay? And who are you and all the rest of it. And your access is, who do you know? What's your network look like? Who do you have access to? Either one step removed, steps removed, or whatever. So I pay attention to that. So when I graduated from uh, getting my PhD, I lived in Texas. I'm not from town, born and raised in New York. I I had contacts, but they were all in criminal justice. And my long-term goal is not to specialize in criminal justice. It's to get out in the world, right? Companies and corporations and organizations and associations. But the fact of the matter is, I wanted to do what I wanted to do. The only people I knew were cops and probation officers.
Yeah.
So I cut my teeth on speaking to and training some of the toughest audiences out there, and that was cops and other criminal justice officials. So I would walk into a training room, and um, you know, law enforcement training is usually 8 hours. It's 1,000 words per PowerPoint slide. People check out after 10 minutes. I said, okay, I've got to figure out a way to do this in order to capture their attention because of what we were just talking about, right? Be authentic with them,
Yep.
but also to get rehired. I need to come back more than once. So I decided to do something they've never seen before. And I bring a boombox into law enforcement academies and police departments. And the first thing cops hear when they walk into the room is Leonard Skinner or Eric Clapton or B.B. King or Carlos Santana, whatever.
Yeah.
And I know their first response is, okay, this is going to be different. This is
Yeah.
going to be different.
Yeah.
And
It's
then I
actually.
take everything from my background and include it in the training. I show family photos, 14 people. I play the harmonica, I play the guitar, I bring in an amplifier. I do all this stuff in police departments and companies and conferences and associations because people don't expect it.
And they love it probably too, right?
Oh, they love it. They're like, oh, we never seen anything like this. That was awesome.
Yeah.
So, from a business perspective, the very first year I started, I had 32 engagements, 32 paid speaking engagements. And then the next year we doubled it and we double revenue and the whole thing because I came to the game different, authentic, funny, engaging, and that's what everybody look, when you watch a ball game on TV, who does the Jumbotron show?
It shows people being real, having fun,
Those people
right?
being real.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't show somebody who's just sitting there. They show somebody dancing in the aisle. It shows a couple kissing. It shows somebody in a goofy outfit or whatever. Because people want something that's a little different and entertaining and informational and
Mhm.
educational.
Yeah. It's all about that authenticity and bringing that. Um, any tips on how to be more authentic in a business life? Because a lot of times it's really easy, in your personal life with your friends, you can cut loose and be yourself. But how can you do that whenever you're either starting out something, or just as a tip for people to get ahead in business as it is, if they're in a career that they might like, and they just want to be their more authentic self, but they feel kind of like they're like everybody else expects them to be, Joe the perfect guy who comes in 8 a.m. and leaves at 5 and does everything right and doesn't really have a personality. They think of him maybe as the nice guy or the nice girl, but there's nothing, nothing special that they say about him, or it doesn't have a personality. So how can we be a little more authentic in the business world without, I guess, losing, that without losing something?
It's I've been doing the transition from the criminal justice world,
Mm-hmm.
which, by the way, I talk to, the top organizations, agencies in the country. And, you better believe that in some respects, there's a business component to that. When
Oh, yeah.
their budgets are $1 billion, $2 billion, and they're running prisons and jails and all the things we see in Ferguson. And, you can take a lot of business tools and apply it to law enforcement from a customer service perspective and on and on. But I find, what I do is show whatever audience I'm dealing with the starting point, and the starting point is a common starting point. I don't care if it's criminal justice or if it's Fortune 500. And that is, your organization is not going to change unless, number one, you get buy-in from the top, and number two, it starts changing on an individual level. You can issue all the all the procedures and policies and memos you want, but if people want to drag their legs because they're afraid, and drag their feet because they're afraid, or they think the leadership are a bunch of idiots, or more likely they're locked down in their own fear. And the fear comes in the form of procrastination,
Mm-hmm.
gossip, all that stuff, being an obstructive presence in a staff meeting, all that stuff. That's fear driven. Stress and anxiety are fear-driven phenomena, right? So,
Yeah.
so the bottom line for me is, we talk a lot about goals, right? Goal setting. Oh, I got to set goals. Got to set goals. Goals is like the fourth or fifth thing down the line. Before that, it's what are your priorities? And people don't stop often enough to decide what are my true priorities. Because when you figure out your true priorities in the workplace and in at home, then you can it becomes a lot easier to say no to people, right? That's a major problem in the workplace. Somebody stops by, I don't know how to say no. I don't know how to get them out of my office. I want to be nice to everyone. But if you have your priorities really clearly defined and you know what you believe about yourself and what your goals are, it's so much easier to go forward. It's so much easier to say no to people. It's so much easier to be more productive and to have a more positive experience.
Yeah, I think that's perfect because that's exactly what I'm doing this for. Because if you don't know your purpose, it's harder to figure out, it's hard to figure out your values, and then you don't know what you want to do, and then you go this way and you go that way, and you're all over the place and you're scattered, and people aren't attracted to, people aren't attracted to that. So once you know your purpose and your values and what you stand for, you can pick everything, in your life and in business a lot easier and a lot faster, to and you'll start moving quicker and just move along your path faster than you think you can. And that's exactly what's starting to happen to me as I found my purpose. I've been trying to inspire others to find their purpose and then start making money doing things they love. It's not about getting rich quick. It's about just being passionate about what you want to do, and then from there, bring money into you. And if you want to make a lot of money, great. If you just want to have a normal, life and family and kids and everything, that's fine too. But you're happy doing what you do. Is there any that kind of makes me think of? Is there anything, any other tips uh, to help bring your purpose, more into your business? any failures. That's actually one thing I wanted to bring up and I haven't talked about. Any failures that you want to talk about that you learned something from on your journey.
Oh yeah. Oh, the failure part an important part of the transition and transformation that I've been going through and will go through for the rest of my life is changing my mind about the definition of mistakes and failure. And if you read enough business bios and all that stuff, and they'll tell you, every single one of them will tell you the importance and the benefit of failing.
Hmm.
And so for me, um, we're doing great. We're just starting year 4. So the first year was, the goal was, am I a viable speaker and trainer? Year 2, expand a little bit. Year 3, I got totally lost because I did not stick to the knitting, as Tom Peters says, right? I did not stay true to what I believed was my path, and I went down so many rabbit holes. And I said, oh, this person and this coach I have and this business coach and this personal coach, and they're doing this, and so let's jump on that. And we spent a ton of time and money developing programs and the website and getting everything up to speed, up to date, to do things that were not what I wanted to do. And they weren't coming from me, and they weren't serving my clientele the best way possible. And you know what? Okay. Okay. So, there's a business book called Good to Great by Jim Collins,
Hmm.
and there's a phrase in that book that sticks in my mind very almost always. And it goes, face the brutal facts. And so last year we faced the brutal facts. Number one, we're chasing the wrong stuff, and we're doing it in the wrong way, and we're doing it for the wrong reasons. So put the brakes on everything. Get rid of that website we developed. Get rid of those programs, the products that we spent money on that weren't appropriate for what we were doing. Stop it. Group and create products that people love and that are useful and that speak directly to the core of who I am and who they want to be.
Yeah, that reminds me a little bit about me, and I'm really glad you said that because as you as you go down your journey, sometimes you get caught up in that rabbit hole, like you said you did, and you start making wrong choices or right choices. And I made earlier last year or in the middle of last year, I decided I was going to be true and authentic in my message. I've always wanted to help people, but I didn't know in what capacity. And through my coach, I learned, okay, so life coaching is what I want to do. I want to help inspire and keep people accountable and on task, towards their goals of whatever it is. And it reminds me that I had to take a big leap of faith going towards this, and I know I'm in the right direction, but I still have that like haze in front of me of like, okay, I know I'm on the road because I can feel the ground below me, and I know I'm going in the right direction, but I can't see 30, 40, 50, 100 feet past me. I know what my goal is, and I know what it looks like, but it's not there yet. And I think a lot of people get discouraged in that moment and quit because they don't see the results right away,
Yes.
or that they want this big grandiose goal, but they don't realize it's going to take 3, 4, 5, 6 years or 10 years or whatever it is, and that you're only in year 1, you're only in year 2, you're only in year or month 1 or week 1, and you want to quit. Any tips or anything you've learned to help keep the pace and remind people that it's a marathon and not a sprint when they're trying to do something love and make money at it too?
Yes. That's great, and that's an awesome point. There are a couple of things that I do. Number one, and I've dedicated myself probably within the last 6 months to doing this a lot more. I've always been, because of the family I grew up in, right? I've always been a networker.
Hmm.
I've always been connected to people, talking to people. I mean, you couldn't survive in my house and not be. And then, we're all, at church, and every one of those 12 kids has their own network of people. and we're all in different fields and different professions. So we learn growing up and in our 20s, networking. But I ratcheted that up to where if I'm not on the road speaking, I I do my writing, my book writing, and my blog writing and everything, usually very early in the morning, and then I go out and I go out and I meet people and I meet people and I meet people, and that helps a lot to be reminded that you're not the worst, you're not the you're not the one that's just you suck at this and everything's just horrible. It's that we're all in this game, right? We're all in different parts of our progression. The second thing, it's kind of related to this, is I read. If I'm in a good role, I will read somewhere from 10 to 15 books a month. If I'm really working it,
Wow.
because that's another form of networking, right? And you're learning, right? People say, "Oh, mistakes, failure, thank God," and you read all this stuff about successful people, and it just it's rolling, rolling, rolling. So networking and reading are two huge things. And the last one that speaks to what you're talking about is reminding myself of what the plateau means. So in my time management class, I talk to people about the plateau. So we start something new and it's fun, it's exciting. We get a lot of short-term, progress, and we can see it and maybe even measure it and all that. And then we hit the plateau. And the plateau is where, especially the first one, that's where people quit.
Yeah.
Except the plateau is where your brain is gelling all this stuff that you have experienced, and you're working your skills and you're getting better and better and better, and then at some point you're going to make the next leap almost automatically, right? I noticed that when I was studying. I studied Russian, Chinese, Spanish, play the harmonica, play the guitar, write books. The pattern's the same every time. It's progress, plateau, 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 plateau. And if you know what the plateau means, and if you know that if you stay on it there's another leap coming, then you get all that angst out of your head
Yeah.
about, oh, I'm not making any progress. Oh my God, this is too hard. Oh my God. But no, just keep going. If you figured out priorities and belief and goals and you're on the right track and you're being authentic, and even if you're not on the right track, if you're being authentic, you'll figure out that you're not on the right track.
Hmm.
But you just have to keep in mind what that plateau is really all about.
Yeah, I like what you said there, the Jello effect, and it instantly reminded me of when you hit that plateau. That's probably a good time, to take a break and maybe take a little mini vacation or just stop, go enjoy life. And it's a perfect reminder for me because I'm at the plateau, the plateau, and I'm about to go out to San Diego this week, and I'm gonna run my half marathon that I've been training, for the past 3-4 months. And I'm at that point of like, okay, I'm ready to stop for just, at least a few days or a week, and like just let that jello kind of firm up, and then go to the next level. So I'm glad you said that, and thank you for saying that, because I needed I needed that reminder to let me know that it's okay to to be in that, I guess, that jello. And that kind of works with my personality. I'm a goofball, so now I'm envisioning myself in jello. That's a whole other subject.
I think
uh,
the last thing I wanted to mention was, and I don't know who said this, but this phrase, "You can't go through life with sweaty palms."
mm,
So the last thing, the fourth thing is stop fighting. Stop fighting yourself. Stop fighting your spirit. Stop fighting the process. Stop, because we're just in fight, fight. Oh, I got it, and I get myself so stressed out from the fight, and I miss assets and access. I miss opportunities. I miss possibilities. I miss widening my blinders to see what it may not look exactly the way. In fact, I can almost guarantee that what we do is not going to look exactly the way we dream about it, because other people get involved, they make suggestions, we learn things that we didn't know before.
yeah.
And so it's be gentle yet firm and stay flexible at the same time. Just stop beating yourself up and fighting your own way on your path.
Yeah, that reminds me. That's exactly what yoga does for me. You know, it's gentle yet firm. Sometimes a pain in the butt, but it's also made me flexible at the same time too. So, so as we're kind of winding down here, Joe, you know, what's one of the last pieces of advice you can give someone?
Oh, it's kind of what you said earlier. This is about getting, first and foremost, to me, it's about getting in touch with yourself, right? In terms of being authentic. And I mean, you can BS your way through this, but people see that. I mean, and you and everyone watching can think of their own experience when they saw something totally fake. And they were turned off and it didn't work for them and they didn't get anything out of it.
Yeah.
So, dig inside because everything that we do is predicated on self-awareness and starting from the inside out. You can look in the Bible, you can look at emotional intelligence, the four pillars of emotional intelligence, you can look at the 7 habits of highly effective people, you can look at all these sources, and they all tell you the same thing. Number one, self-awareness. That's where all this stuff starts.
Mm-hmm. It does. Meditation's been the biggest thing for me to bring about self-awareness in myself and just living a daily life. In fact, this morning I was meditating and just reminding myself I was having a little struggle this morning with meditating, and and it gets frustrating sometimes when you're in that meditation mode. You're like, okay, I'm supposed to be zenning out here or not thinking as much, but it's just another reminder that it's not perfect along the whole way, you know. So Joe, you know, as we're winding down here, tell people, you know, how they can get in touch with you.
Yes. My website is www.joeserio.com. I'm on Facebook at Joe Serio Enterprises. I'm at Twitter at Joe Serio Speaks. And you can find me on email. I mean, I'm at joe@joeserio.com.
All right, cool. Thanks, Joe. And what's your tagline again?
Get the nerve. Get the
Get-
nerve to succeed, my friend.
All right. Well, thanks, Joe. I really appreciate it. You have yourself an awesome day, man.
All right. Thanks, Bradley.
All right, cool.